Criminals should not have more rights than their victims. 5 years ago, my daughter was a victim. Her boyfriend at the time went to her apartment after he had been drinking and apparently doing drugs, and he beat her up, he choked her, he stabbed her, and this went on for about 4 hours. For the next 12 hours, he held her captive in her apartment. During the day, we had been getting text messages from her, and she did not show up for work. He had called her in sick at her job at a nursing home. Our other daughter worked at the same nursing home, and when that happened, she and her other friend became suspicious and thought that something wasn't right. So they got a hold of us, and all day long we were trying to get a hold of her. Kept getting text messages from her phone that she was fine and that she would call us when she got home. She said she was not home. We found out later none of those messages were from her. For 12 hours approximately, she begged him to let her get to the hospital. She had a large wound that was bleeding, and one from her arm and also one on her head. She tried to get him to take her to the hospital, but he wouldn't, or let her call somebody. So that night, about 9 o'clock at night, we got a telephone call from Bellin Hospital. They told us they had our daughter, and could we come to the emergency room. So my husband and I drove to the emergency room. The nurses tried to prepare us for what we were going to see, but nothing could prepare us. When we walked into the hospital room, I remember thinking that if my daughter wouldn't be able to talk and I could hear her voice, that I would not know that it was her. She looked so different. Her face was extremely swollen. Her hair was all matted up around her head. But she was able to talk to us and reassure us she felt like she was going to be okay. We were questioned by the police. We told them what we knew had happened. They had also talked to her. Apparently the boyfriend drove her close to the hospital, and then he got out of her car, and she had to drive herself down the street to Bellin Hospital, to the emergency room. The next day we met with the police. They were gathering evidence at our apartment, and they came to our house then and interviewed her for several hours. No one knew where this man was. He seemed to have disappeared. So it took about 4 days. On Thursday that week, she got a telephone call, and the police were able to trace the number to a house where this man was hiding. When they got to the house, they had to use police dogs to get him out because he was hiding in the attic. He was arrested, and then shortly after, we went to the courthouse with our daughter, and she had to testify and tell the judge what had happened so they could determine if it was probable cause that this man committed the crime. The judge believed that there was plenty of evidence, and he was not given any bail, so he went right to the county jail. For 18 months, we went to the courthouse for different hearings, talked to the district attorney's office, and they have a victim's advocate who helped us through this process. We knew it would take a long time, but 18 months later, we finally got to the point where the DA's office gave a plea deal, and this man accepted the plea deal. However, many months later, we found out that his lawyer had put down that he could receive up to 15 years in prison, and when the judge sentenced him, he gave him 18 years. With the plea deal, he was supposed to be able to get 18 years. If there had been a trial, the police had told us that he could be facing potentially 60 years, so he took the plea deal. Because of this error on the paperwork, the lawyer had written 15 years instead of 18. The Court of Appeals has been upholding all of his appeals so far. 5 years later, we got a notice from the district attorney's office stating that his case is now at the state Supreme Court. The state Supreme Court can determine whether the original sentence should be upheld, or if they feel that there is an injustice being done to this man, we could go back to the beginning. I don't know if that means a trial or if it would have another plea deal where he could accept a different deal. My fear is after 5 years, he would be able to get out of prison now. If that is the case, I'm concerned for my daughter, obviously. If he would come after her, that will change our lives again. However, I feel more that he probably won't. He will probably find another victim, and this victim may not live through it. My daughter was very close to not living through this crime, this assault. So I feel very strongly that criminals should not have more rights than their victims. And even though there is a justice system, we have to follow rules, things are in place so that innocent people are not put away. Many times this is not the case. The criminal learns how to work around the system and be able to get their sentences shortened and get out of prison. He should be in jail or prison for a very long time. Criminals should not have more rights than their victims. The victims have to live through this experience for the rest of their lives. If they have to go back to court many times, they have to relive it every time they go back to court or receive a letter or any kind of judgment that is going on with this person.